Welcome to the final session of the day. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our executive director at the Veal Institute for Entrepreneurship here at Case Western Reserve University. I also teach at Weatherhead. I'm really happy to have a session. I mean, much of the work that we do here on campus is focused on helping students support their entrepreneurial dreams. And voyage, and Bob Zopko from some Case Western Reserve LaunchNet is here, and he works very passionately on helping students as well. So both Nate Swift and Matt Campagna, I got to know when they were students here. I never had Matt in class. Matt, I don't know how you avoided getting me in class. Wisely. Nate, I had who participated, was in our STEP program, which is the, I'm having a senior moment. What does STEP stand for?
Science, Technology, Entrepreneurship program.
Right, and you were in the physics track. This rolls off the tongue, particularly when we have masks on. So I had Nate in my entrepreneurial finance class when he was here, which is great. And it's been really interesting watching the journey that Matt continues to be on with Reflection. And that Nate has gone on, and we'll sort of share where things are with Hegemon. Rucha, who's one of my current students in my Beyond Silicon Valley class, is our moderator for our final session. Please let us know if you're on Zoom via the chat or just raising your hand if you want to ask a question to Matt and Nate, and I will let Rucha know. And if you're on LinkedIn Live, just put a question in the comments. So with that, I will turn it over to Rucha, who's going to run the show.
I'm just going to briefly introduce Nate and Matt. Like we said, Nate graduated with a master's degree from the Science and Technology Entrepreneurship program. He was the co-founder and COO of Hegemon, which was a startup company that was developing hedgehog-inspired impact technology to provide protection. This technology was applied to products like helmets and other sports gear, and he now works as the manager of business projects and planning for Linden Polyurethanes. And Matt attended Case Western Reserve and studied computer engineering, and he is the founder and CEO of Reflection Interactive Technologies, a company that was started in 2015. It's a neurofitness company that offers a service to train and monitor mental performance like reaction time, peripheral vision, decision-making, and memory. And the company currently has a partnership with Under Armour, which I thought was pretty cool. So just to start off with the question, what influenced you guys to get into this industry? And I can start with me.
To be perfectly honest, my career has been pretty industry agnostic. I've been kind of jumping through various industries. I worked in defense for a while, and now I work in like the plastics industry. I worked for a couple companies, Hegemon included, in sports equipment. What kind of got me into this was an idea, the Hegemon idea, which is hedgehog-inspired shock-absorbing liner for a football helmet. So in the wild, hedgehogs are very active foragers. They climb looking for food. They sometimes fall out of trees. They're pretty clumsy. Sometimes they'll jump to evade a predator. And their spiky quills will absorb the shock and protect them. And it has to do with the mechanical properties. So this was an idea that came out of the University of Akron's biomimicry PhD program. I had a few friends who were going through it. And basically they had a class where they came up with this idea. It was such a great idea that they were encouraged to keep doing it. At this time, I was here at Case looking for an internship and for a thesis topic for my master's program, and it just all kind of fit together, and it was really good timing. So that's how I got involved with it. Regarding getting into the sports side of it, it was just the most logical application. We had, this was right when the kind of concussion crisis was starting to appear in the headlines. It was right when that movie with Will Smith came out. There were starting to be a lot of stories about all the risks and especially surrounding football. So it made a lot of sense to target that as our initial market. I mean, the long-term plan with the company was to branch out. I mean, it was a platform technology. There's a lot of applications for shock absorption, packaging, automobile panels, fall protection flooring. I mean, the list goes on. But this was just a very logical starting point, just because it was a very obvious need, and it was an industry that. We learned later this wasn't necessarily a valid argument, but it was an industry where there seemed like there was space for us to get in because there were only a few companies, and there hadn't been a lot of innovation for a long time. So, does that answer?
And then can I send the same question over to Matt?
Sure. So, moment here, but. Yeah, when my co-founder Matt and I started Reflection, he actually had slid headfirst into the boards during an ice hockey game, and similar to some of the reasoning for Nate starting Hedgemon, Matt suffered a very severe concussion, and he was sidelined for months with that. And so from that point on, us being friends, we became very passionate about cognitive performance and wellness in athletics, and from there we started to build what was originally a concussion monitoring and recovery tool, and found that most of our traction was actually on the performance side. So as Mindy Byral once told me when I was at Case, follow the dollar, and that's what we did. We listened to the customers who we had, who were paying us for our product and service, and moved towards the direction of performance training.
Great, thank you so much. My next question is, what would you say is the biggest challenge in the industry at this moment? And I can start with Nate again.
So just to clarify, I mean, so when you're saying the biggest challenge, do you mean challenge for entrepreneurs or challenge for the industry itself? What kind of problems are they struggling with?
With entrepreneurs.
That's a good question. So I would say specific to our area, so in this case, football helmets, addressing concussion, protection. So what we thought would make, like I mentioned earlier, what we thought would make it easy for us to get into the industry actually turned out to make it kind of difficult. We made the assumption that because there weren't very many companies in the space and there wasn't a whole lot of innovation, it would be really easy for us to come in and kind of grab a hold of some of the market share. And we had this great idea. It worked pretty well. It turned out that because of how not small the industry is, but how few players there are, it was actually harder for us to get in. There were three. In the football helmets, there's three major companies. There's Rydell, Schutt, and Zenith. For a while, there was a fourth one called Visus, and they went bankrupt while we were still going. And they had a good technology as well. The three companies that have been there for a long time do everything in their power to keep anyone else from coming in. And once you get past a certain point in development, if you start to get some traction, Rydell will start sending you basically litigation letters and find some way that you're infringing on their helmet. And I know Visus was fighting that when they went bankrupt, and that's happened to a lot of others. There's a ton of liability that you have to carry if you're going to be making any kind of protective equipment like that. And our approach to it was we weren't going to make the whole helmet. We were going to make just this liner and try to get in with one of the existing companies that could integrate this technology into their product line. That way we could kind of lean on them for their development, their manufacturing, their distribution channels. But we were surprised at how closed off all of the companies really were to working with us. I mean, we had meetings with all of them, and they would all kind of make it, yeah, sounds great. Never hear from them again. So I think there's a ton of talk, especially around football, about all of the focus on protection and everything. But you don't actually see that much innovation. I mean, most of the helmets over the last 30 or 40 years have barely changed. I mean, they're all foam, especially from Rydell. They've changed where the foam is and add more foam in some areas, and there's little tweaks. It's all been incremental. They haven't done any major breakthroughs. And the other two companies, although they use different technologies and different structures, like there hasn't really been much change for a very long time. And I think that's a real shame, because I think there still is some room for improvement. But at the same time, there's not a lot of room for improvement unless you want your helmets to be this big. Because of course concussions, then I don't want to step on Matt's toes talking about concussions here, because you can describe them much better than I can. But essentially, concussions are largely driven by the peak acceleration you experience during an impact, because your brain moves around inside your skull. And so when you run into someone or hit a wall or the grass or whatever, anything you can do to reduce that peak acceleration you experience, the better your chances are of avoiding a concussion. But when you only have about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches of padding, which is your stopping distance, there's only so much you can do to reduce that peak acceleration. I mean, it's just kind of inherent with the hit. And if you got two people running full speed at each other, there's always going to be a pretty substantial amount of acceleration. So, yeah.
Thank you. And same question to Matt.
So the question is generally, what's one of the biggest problems in the sports tech industry now?
Yeah.
I think I think a big problem that I'm seeing that we face and a lot of other companies face is when it comes to training and tracking athletes, whether that's tracking their neuro performance or it's tracking general fitness for consumers. When you're collecting all this data on athletes or fitness consumers, whether that's like I said, neuro data or sleep data or nutrition or anything else, it's one thing to be able to tell people, okay, your sleep efficiency is 80%, or your reaction time is let's say 400 milliseconds. But to be able to actually take that a step further and personalize training and make intelligent recommendations to them about what they should do next or what they should do about it or why they should care, I think is something that you're seeing a lot of companies try to solve right now. And a problem with athletes in particular is they're doing so many things. They're training their mind, they're training their bodies, and they're training their craft and their sport. And they could have a bad day, they could lose some sleep, they could be studying, there are all these different things that come into play. And it's really hard in an isolated way to say, okay, based on your neuro performance, this is what we recommend you do, when you don't take into account all of those other factors. But nonetheless, it's something that many companies are trying to solve. Is how do we make intelligent recommendations for what an athlete should do based on their demographic information, based on their goals, from only a small picture of that athlete and what they're doing. And AMSs are trying to go that way, AMS being athlete management systems that aggregate a whole lot of data into one place. But they suffer from a slightly different issue than companies like ours that have a very deep knowledge of your neuro performance. You have these data aggregator athlete management system companies that have a very shallow understanding of every single data point that they're collecting, and therefore they're not really able to make very deep recommendations. And that all of that to say that I think it's a big problem. It's unanswered. Is how do you take a holistic view of an athlete somewhat automatically through software and provide guidance to an athlete or to a consumer about how they should train to reach their goals?
Actually, I'd love to just to add on to that, because that's a really good point. As far as being able to track athletes and collect the necessary data, and this is going back. So it's possible that there's been better technology developed in the last few years since I've been less involved. But I simultaneously, while working for Hegemon, I worked for another company called Prevent Biometrics, which is a Cleveland Clinic spin-out, where we were developing a mouth guard that can measure head impacts in extremely good, with extremely good accuracy. Essentially, they were instrumented mouth guards with accelerometers in them, and if they're fit really well to your top teeth, any movement of your head, there will be no relative movement between them and your brain. But our purpose for doing this was that the data that was out there for on-field concussions was virtually meaningless. First of all, there hadn't been a lot of it collected, but what had been collected outside of like a lab setting was the technology used. So like one of the examples was Rydell has I think they still have it, a football helmet that has accelerometers built into the padding. So the idea is that you can have your athlete wear it, and anytime they get hit, it collects the impact motion data, sends it to a big spreadsheet, and then you can track exactly what that hit looked like. If you couple that with some diagnostics or some other neurological testing, you can figure out, okay, like these types of hits are what are more likely to cause concussions. These types of hits are less likely. So a lot of the points of that on the research side are so that we have a better understanding of, okay, we're trying to improve the protection on the field, but we need to understand what we're actually trying to protect against. Which hits are the worst ones? What do we focus on? The problem is that those types of sensing technologies, like something in your helmet, there's so much relative movement between the helmet and your head. I mean, even if you strap it down as hard as you possibly can, if you take a hard enough hit, it's still wobbling around. And even like the slightest relative motion, it turns your data into a random number generator. And there's a lot of studies that have been done. I mean, there's papers that have been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, trying to, essentially saying like we figured out the types of hits that cause concussions. They were using this Rydell system. It's called the HIT system, and I looked at some of their data, and it was very clearly not head motion. The frequency of the signal was so high, your head can't move like that without you having like a skull fracture. It was very obviously, it was the helmet moving, and that was what they were recording, and that was what this went on. This is at least had been going on for a pretty long time, where companies were trying to innovate protective technologies based on data that was useless. So what we did to Prevent was trying to fix that by collecting much better data, and eventually it turned into more of a consumer product for just monitoring. So you could stand on the side of the field and say, oh, like look at your phone, oh, Johnny just got hit, pull him out. But it initially was much more for like that data collection and just research side that I think is still largely lacking, and that's just for the concussion side of it. And obviously, there's much more to the whole picture of the athlete that I'm sure has similar shortcomings.
Thank you. My next question is, what are some common misconceptions that people have about the work that you do or have done? And I can start with Matt for this one.
Oh. That's a good question. Misconceptions about the work, is that specific to sports tech or just entrepreneurship in general?
Either
Maybe I can take it that way.
Yeah, whatever way you want to take it.
I think I'll take it just the general entrepreneurship way. I think that it's very romanticized, and when you're in it, it's very difficult. And a friend, Zyla Foxland, who a lot of you know, I think one time, I'm not sure if she borrowed this from somebody else or not, but said it's like being on a lion when you're running a startup, where everybody around you says, wow, that's so cool, you're riding a lion. But meanwhile, you're saying, I'm on a lion, get me off of this lion, because it's just a crazy ride. And every single day you deal with new challenges, and I think in order to start a company, you have to not be capable of working, or maybe I should say not to start one, but if you're planning on doing it, you should do it because you would not be satisfied doing anything else. But I think it's always really important to make that point to folks that it's a really hard path, and think wisely before trying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the old, oh, it's so great, you can be your own boss. I am the probably worst boss I've ever had for myself, because anytime you're not working on it, you feel like you should be working on it. There's always so much more that has to be done, that it just feels like it never stops. And on the other end, I mean, especially when we were starting, I had no clue what I was doing. And none of us did. I mean, the four of us who co-founded Hegemon, none of us had ever run a business before, let alone been in a startup before. So we didn't know what direction to go in. We didn't know what the next steps were. I mean, we were just kind of grasping at straws for, at least, especially for the first year. We also had no money, so that made it even harder. But it took a long time, I would say, before we really, started to figure out, okay, here's kind of the direction we want to go. Here's the path to get there. Here's some of the milestones we need to reach. And then the other problem is that everything takes like 4 times as long, if not more, to get through than you plan, and costs way more. So I mean, it's kind of like they say, like owning a boat. The 2 happiest days in a boat owner's life are the day he buys his boat and the day he sells his boat. Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably pretty similar for having a business, and even if the business fails, that last day is still quite a relief, and I can say that from experience.
And to build on that, after being really pessimistic, maybe I'll say that I think goal setting is something that's very important when you start a business, even for yourself. That way you can know when you beat the goal and if you want to go past the goal. Sometimes meeting the goal is good enough, even if that's on a day-to-day basis, about, okay, how do I keep myself sane and still take care of myself as a person when I'm running a company. And if you have goals for yourself about what you need to get done in order to move the needle every day for the company, and then you can take care of yourself. You can work out, you can eat well, you can sleep, all the things that you need to do. And I think that it extends into the larger picture of setting good goals for the business about where you should be from a revenue standpoint, where you should be from a personnel standpoint, from a technology standpoint, and communicating that to your stockholders, I think is really the key to being happy in a startup. Because if you're communicating all the time and you set good goals, everybody is on the same page, and then you can eliminate a lot of tension that way. And when you do hit your goals, it's incredibly rewarding, more rewarding than anything that you could do in a normal job. No job's really normal, but it's a ton of fun. So at the same time that I would say think wisely. If you do it, it's a blast, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I should be, to be fair, I don't want to just be talking negatively about it. I mean, it was hard. It was also a heck of an experience. I learned so much from doing this. I mean, I was 1 year into the STEP program. Actually, not even. I was 6 months. I was 1 semester into the STEP program, which is literally the purpose of the program here is to teach you how to be an entrepreneur and start a company. And I learned a ton from it. But within a month of starting Hegemon, I had far surpassed anything that I had learned in just doing it. I mean, just jumping right into it and getting your hands dirty is just the best way to learn about pretty much every aspect of the business. And I've learned so many skills that I can take with me. I mean, I've worked for a couple companies since starting Hegemon, and I've used those skills I got from Hegemon in every single one of them. I mean, it's so transferable that even if it's something you only do for a few years and it's not, you know, it doesn't become like a huge success. I mean, the value that you will get out of it, even like the intangible value, is really substantial. And so anyone who's interested in it, I would say I would encourage you to just have to kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. It's not the romanticized Silicon Valley.
And turning it over to Professor.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and thank you, Matt and Nate, for joining and reflecting on the journey. I mean, you both started these companies as students here, and a couple of us in the room, our day jobs are sort of thinking about how to better support students in the journeys. And, I think the reality is, and I had Nate in class, although it wasn't a class where we worked on trying to start companies. There are classes that exist on our campus and many campuses where people get to go through some sort of simulated starting a company journey. I mean, Every Key, which is a company that was also started by alums, came out of a class. It's and I'm sort of smiling behind my mask here. I mean, you guys, there's always our poster children, right? So Matt and Nate, when you were both here, and folks like Zyla and folks like Prince Ghosh and Lucas Friedman, those crazy students that really kind of make the time when you don't have time to do this as a company. What advice do you have? I mean, I'm wearing my university hat here, but I think it goes even more broadly to universities that say they want to help student entrepreneurs. Like, how can universities, whether it's ours or others, really help support student entrepreneurs and give you what you need?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of other universities should be using CASE as an example. I mean, the resources that we have here, like ThinkBox is amazing. Just you can make and build and prototype whatever you want. But I mean, the entrepreneurial resources we have here, I want to call it, is not Blackstone, it's LaunchNet now, right? Okay. LaunchNet, the IP Venture Clinic, I guess MEM, but that's not as much entrepreneurship. STEP. I mean, there's so many parts at this school, areas of the school where you can get the help and the connections, the introductions to other people in the industry who can help you, resources for funding. I mean, obviously Northeast Ohio itself is amazing for finding money. It's shocking how much financial and non-monetary assistance we were able to get from this community here. I think that's something that a lot of other schools should really shoot for. So I know that's not what you wanted, because you wanted me to give you advice. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this was, I really can't imagine having had a better experience at another, with another setup than what CASE has.
All right, man. I know you'll give me some more unfiltered.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for tech companies specifically, although maybe this applies outside of tech, I'm just not sure because I don't have that experience, that recent industry experience from folks at the university was helpful to us, and I would notice that I would gravitate towards those folks. John Gibbons in the Sears lab would be an example of somebody that I would go to whenever we would be working on new designs of our circuits or that sort of thing. So I think those sorts of resources who can help students who might have incomplete knowledge about what they're trying to build from a technology standpoint is really important. I think resources like ThinkBox that beyond just giving folks tools also give them a sense of community of other people who are making. I think that's really important and can't be understated. But I think that Case has that culture where the folks who go there are interested in doing that sort of thing, and that's why you see such a big crowd at ThinkBox, and you see people doing their own thing, and it's just a good environment. And I think having that sort of environment and building communities around making things, whether that's physical goods or services or building it into companies, is really important. And then I think on the backside of that, giving flexibility to students who are starting a company to pursue their company and frankly use part of that experience that they're building as to count it some way against their education, I think is important, because once you start a company and you get very focused on how do I use my time most efficiently, you start to analyze everything and you start to look at, okay, is this class, whatever particular class I'm doing, worth my time, or should I be focusing on the business? And sometimes the answer is, okay, that class actually is going to benefit me more than whatever I was going to be working on for the business. And many times it's the other way around, where you say, no, I have to work on the business, I can't go to this class, I'll study later, I'll get a B instead of an A, but I'm still going to get the knowledge. But I think finding ways to support those students from an investment of their time perspective, and economically in some way, because if you can somehow turn the progress that they've made in their company into credits for them, then I think it honors their time and it in some ways stops education from getting in the way of learning, which I think can sometimes happen when you're trying to go to school and build a company at the same time.
Bob wanted to ask a question.
Hey, Matt, great to see you. So yeah, I specifically remember you and Zyla were in a entrepreneur class, and you had to not be there to be in the South by Southwest Student Startup Madness competition, right?
Right.
So it's like I could sit in class and learn about this, or I could go out there and compete in the marketplace. It was really cool. One question specifically about your product, because you've done a couple changes, and you're doing some different verticals with race car drivers. Hopefully you didn't help Evander get ready for his fight. But he's, and Matt can explain that, he's got Evander Holyfield's son as his spokesperson, just amazing. But what were some aha things that you saw that you thought were gonna work, and it's like, holy crap, this stuff really works, and you saw some really great results from them, using the Edge and your product. That's it.
Sure. So the question is just where have we provided some of the most value to our customers?
Yeah.
Bob, is that kind of what you're asking?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's saying yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Got it. I would say that really our most successful customers, because just to back up and give a little bit more context to our business. So we train skills like your reaction time and your peripheral vision, your decision making, that whether you're a wide receiver looking for the ball out of the corner of your eye, or you're a fighter trying to recognize your opponent's tendencies, or you're staring down a fastball, make the difference in sports. And we do that with a couple state-of-the-art lightboard-based touchscreen products that we've developed, where athletes stand in front of these screens and they're doing drills where they're touching the screen, they're gamified, and we're able to train and assess those visual and cognitive skills that we call neuro skills. And then athletes and coaches can see the results from anywhere via our iPhone and iPad app, see how they stack up against the competition, and then all of that in the cloud. And our largest customer segment are businesses that deal with many athletes at a time. and they have different models. Some of them have class-based models, some of them have membership-based models, and it's sort of a free gym atmosphere. And I think what we realized is that a lot of the competition in the neurotraining space kind of built scientific tools that were meant for researchers in a way, and you still needed, even though they gave it a facelift and made it gamified and fun for athletes, they left out the fact that you need to design it for athletes and that you need to design it for the people who train them, namely coaches. And where a lot of the competition built these esoteric systems with really complex data and workflows that were great if you were a researcher working one-on-one with an athlete, we found that everyday gyms really became and when I say everyday gyms, I mean those that are training athletes mostly, not the YMCA or Planet Fitness or so on. But we found that because we designed the product for those users, for the athlete who's going into the weight room and doing a whole bunch of sets assigned by their strength coach, and for the coach who has very limited time to manage their athletes and really doesn't have time to set a unique schedule for every single athlete, we designed the product for them. We made the software fit into the weight room. We've developed something that we called player mode. That's basically a kiosk where athletes can just step up and tap their name and do what was assigned to them. And then on the back end for coaches, we made it really easy to assign templates of drills to all of your athletes at one time and to customize those and provide some automated suggestions. And so I think really what we found was just that performance gyms were really our most successful customers, but it was because we built that workflow for them and made it fit into their life as it is already. And we weren't asking them to really change very much about what they were doing. We listened to their problems and fit into their existing life. So I think if you really want people to adopt technology, and this is something that we talk about a lot in our company, you have to make it disappear as much as you can into the background.
And then we just have about 6 or 7 minutes left, and I just wanted to ask both of you what advice you had to a young entrepreneur looking to get involved in this field. And I can start with Nate.
I would say just lean on pretty much any expert you can find, anyone who's willing to help, anyone who has some kind of either industry knowledge or just general business savvy, especially early on, to help get help kind of structuring your business, structuring what you're going to do, learning the market. There's a ton of resources and knowledge out there, and there's a lot of people out there who really want to help, but you just have to ask. And I would say I kind of wish even though we even had a network of people who could help, we probably didn't use them nearly as much early on as we could have. And there's a lot of questions and problems that we could have solved much more quickly and easily by just asking someone and making a phone call, or taking someone out for coffee to talk about something, rather than trying to toil away on our own and fight through something that the answer was right there. So
similar vein to Nate. Talk to everyone, because sports is so ancestral in a way that people move around all the time. And if you just start building the network, you'll soon have sort of a critical mass that anyone is a second degree away. And I think that's just really important if you're trying to build a business in sports, is knowing people, because everything goes, and this applies to a lot of industries, but pretty much everything goes off of who you know. So just start making those connections. And I think another important layer to add on top of that is do good for people, and they'll do good for you in the future. And not that you should expect that everything is sort of transactional like that, and that if I do something nice for you, you'll do something back immediately. But in general, it works. And so help out wherever you can, and people help you out along the way. And I know that a lot of folks probably in this room, Michael and Bob and Nate, had definitely helped me. And it's the people in your network will lift you up, and you have to do the same to them whenever you can.
Great.
And just turning it back over to Professor Goldberg.
Great. Thank you, Rucha, for moderating. Matt and Nate, thank you at the end of a day on a Friday for hanging out with us and sharing your reflections, no pun intended, on the journey. Boom. It's great. I mean, we so appreciate getting the feedback. There's a lot of folks, both sort of here on campus, on the Zoom call, and the alumni network that are excited to sort of see students kind of stick their necks out on the journey. Sometimes, in the case of Hegemon, you learn a lot in the process, and you go, at the moment, take a job back in the private sector before you do your next thing. And then, like in the case of Matt and Reflection, you're still out there building company. It's exciting.